Y como ya es costumbre, voy a presentar a nuestras ponentes, Marxreiter y Cristina Navarro, quienes su comunicación pues va a ser titulada La mezcla de prácticas curatoriales, educativas y colaborativas, los espacios familiares en el Museo Etnológico de Humboldt Forum de Berlín. Marxreiter estudió teatro, historia del arte y literatura inglesa. Durante sus estudios y hasta 2008, las colaboraciones artísticas en los ámbitos del teatro, la performance y el cine supusieron el centro de su trabajo. Desde 2002 trabaja en la educación artística y se ha centrado en proyectos educativos para jóvenes, estrategias performativas, desarrollo de entornos de aprendizaje e inclusión. Y desde el año 2014 trabaja como comisaria de educación en el Museo Etnológico y el Museo de Arte Asiático de los Museos Estatales de Berlín. Su trabajo se centra en la estrategia general de los conceptos educativos, el programa de los espacios expositivos y los formatos educativos digitales. Cristina Navarro es investigadora asociada para concepto y coordinación de medios digitales de los Museos Estatales de Berlín, Fundación del Patrimonio Cultural Prusiano. Actualmente está desarrollando varios proyectos de mediación digital para la nueva exposición permanente del Museo Etnológico en su nueva ubicación, el Humboldt Forum, que incluye realidad virtual aumentada y mixta, así como juegos e instalaciones inmersivas. Fue responsable de numerosas exposiciones y proyectos multimedia basados en contenidos culturales para museos de Alemania e Inglaterra. Creo que va a ser de gran interés su comunicación. Muchísimas gracias.
Yes, first we would like to thank the Museo del Prado and the organizers of this conference for inviting us and giving us a chance to talk about our work. We will talk about the family spaces I have the pleasure of curating for the Ethnological Museum in the Humboldt Forum. And since this project is very much a team effort, we're here as a small fraction of a team, 2 people together presenting. And Cristina is Spanish, as you might have realized. I am German. And to make it somehow practical for the translators, and since my Spanish is very pequeño, we'll present in English. Our presentation has 3 main sections. First, we would like to give you an impression about the framework of the Humboldt Forum and the ethnological collections, and also about the many contradictions of this huge cultural project in Germany. Second section is about the family spaces, its concept and its strategies. And then Cristina will focus about stories and histories about boats from Oceania. And in the last section, we would like to share 5 key learnings from our project.
So, and now we just start with the site we are talking about. This is the Humboldt Forum. And in the words of some of the stakeholders, it's a place of world culture. Thank you. A place of multiplicity and diversity. A place for the curiosity about the other, the foreign, and the new. In 3 of the facade, the Humboldt Forum refers to the former Prussian royal castle from the 18th century, which was basically demolished in 1950 and substituted by the Palace of the Republic, which was turned down in 2008 and substituted again from the Humboldt Forum. This is actually just a little view from the 4th side of the building and also the inner space. This is obviously not referred to the royal castle, but to the modernist architecture of the 20th century, and basically also in its dimension. The Humboldt Forum is a very superlative project. It's the most expensive cultural building in Germany. And I think it's also the building with the most moving stairs and elevators for visitors. It's a very good, very big place. And just to give you a little overview, there are 4 main partners. playing the exhibition floors we are concentrating today. In there, the Stiftung Preußischer Kulturbesitz with Staatliche Museen, the State Museums of Berlin, we are working for. But there's also like a specific place for the Humboldt University, HU, and the city of Berlin has also a place there with the State Museum and also the Foundation Humboldt Forum. And I think this is, in these days, the Humboldt Forum is one of the most criticized and discussed buildings, cultural sites in Germany. And many of the critics are directed to the building itself, because one of the main things many of the critical voices say is that the building kind of makes a reconstruction of, yes, a part of the history of the site, the royal history, the imperial history, and also by doing so, it is kind of making a reproduction of repeating some of the power relationships of actually former times, maybe current times. Like, and I just brought like one of example, what is like the Christian cross and the couple of the building, and with this Bible, Bible quote, that says actually that everyone has to bow under the power of Christianity, and this is kind of also refer probably, at least in a symbolic way, to the maybe hundreds of thousands of beliefs that are underneath in the ethnological collections. Many of the critical voices are they're directly going to the collection itself, to the collections, for many reasons, but basically because of its colonial past. Because the ethnological connections, they are pointing out like many questions related to ownership, related to provenance, related to restitution. And they also like pointing on the table kind of past and current asymmetrical power relationships in terms of us and the others. And actually, the question the things are about is very often related to how these objects came into the collections, but also why these objects came into the collections. And actually, and this kind of contradiction, this kind of discussions are put into one of concept I really like for this kind of questions. It is the concept of difficult heritage, and it's something that is quite common to the way Europeans collected around the world, and it's something that is a common issue for, I guess, for many scholars, also like a common issue through all the European museums. But the thing is that with the ethnological collections, is even stronger, because they are based in the idea and the conviction of the 19th century that the cultures, the folks, these primitive folks, the objects came from the colonies, they are gonna disappear. This was the like basic conviction, because of a natural evolution in kind of a very racist way, or like the Western hegemony is gonna be the next step for all these primitive folks. With the Humboldt Forum, the ethnological collections and also the collection for Asian art moved from the margins to the center. The former place done in Dahlem, until a couple of years ago, moved to the center of the city, and what is like the main touristic area, and the Humboldt Forum. So now the ethnological collections and the collection for Asian art, they are literally on the other side of the street, where you can see and visit Nefertiti and the Pergamon altar, which is a huge change. And actually, this kind of context, frameworks, and contradictions affects everyone, and it's one of the objects that are, maybe there are more than 1,000 objects already displayed to the publics. And I think that the objects carry memories. I just recall like Heida Geismar, who understands the objects in the collections as sites of meaning. And it also says that she says also that these sites of meaning are always framed and contextualized. And I think we can also understand the kind, like the family spaces we're going to talk about as a part of the areas for outreach and education and interpretation as sites of reflections. And actually, they are the sites of reflection, maybe where we can process this kind of framework and contradictions. And I just, yep.
Thank you. When I started my job as curator of education in 2014, the director of the Ethnological Museum told me, well, I have something really great for you. There are 4 family spaces that you can curate for our visitors. And the idea was, because formerly in Dahlem, as my colleague pointed out, there were the exhibits, and there was, in another building, there was a children's museum. And so she thought, now we bring it together when we move to the Humboldt Forum. And that was my starting point, creating these spaces. I started out with focusing on the needs of families and children, so with a really visitor-centered approach. And I thought, what is it that children and families coming on a Sunday afternoon, what do they need and what do they want to experience going to the museum? And they want to have communication, they want to learn something, but it also needs to be playful, and they also need to rest. Restorative spaces, we heard from our former presenter, they want to learn something, they want to touch. And the second challenge was, how can we bring these needs of families and children together with the topics and the objects from the exhibition? And so the strategy we found was creating a reference to the exhibition by asking questions. Each family space, and there are 3 of them, 4th will be, be developed next year. So we developed a question for each of the spaces, and you see the red squares, they are within the exhibition, they are part of the exhibition. So the space next to the African and Cameroon collections, we thought we will have to really talk about colonial history. And so the question is, what does history mean to me? The family space within the Oceanic exhibition, we were focusing on orientation, on the ocean, how do I orient myself in the world? And the third one, within the exhibition space of the Amazon collection, how do I understand the world? So to give you the concept in a nutshell, for whom these spaces were designed for families and children aged between 6 and 12, and it's a huge span if you talk about pedagogies. The curatorial approach was, starting with the needs of the target group, so we might call them, but they are also independent areas with thematic reference to the neighboring exhibition module, and not something that kind of makes the content kind of easy for children in a way. And then what really made it super interesting was I decided it must be a joint development with curators, designers, local partners, external activists, and a lot of different people that we brought into this production. The visitor experience is key. We want the spaces activity-oriented and also to have a sojourn quality, that you really like to stay, and you want to browse in books, you want to chill there, so that has both, the activity and also the relaxing aspect. The spaces are visible, they have each a certain color scheme, and they have recurring elements like children's books and children's films to make it easier for the visitors to recognize them. So let me run through the spaces real quick and just showing you the formats and the media that we created and the strategies behind them. In the family space about Africa and German Cameroonian colonial history, what does history mean to me? We created an illustration at the backside of a showcase showing the archives, the closets in Dahlem, and asking the question, why are there 75,000 objects from Africa in the museum in Berlin? And within this illustration, we created peepholes to look at the real objects. and gave context information in easy language to give you an idea why were the Germans so crazily collecting, what drove them, what was their motivations. Then together with an Afro-German activist and writer and a descendant of the royal Cameroonian family, the Mangabell family, Jean-Pierre Félix Séan, we created a radio play about the story of King Rudolf Douala Mangabell, who was living basically in both worlds during the German colonial time, like in Cameroon and also in Germany, and really tried to bridge and be diplomatic, but was killed by the Germans in a very brutal way. And we narrate his story. Today he is a hero in Cameroon. We developed 2 games, one visual novel, What Would You Have Done? And the game takes you to the historical Cameroon, which was occupied by the German Empire as a colony around between 1884 and 1990. And you pick one of the 3 characters and you have to solve difficult questions, and you're thrown into moral dilemmas because this whole colonial situation is, of course, very oppressive and difficult. Then here you can see the visitors playing the game. Then we have a second game, it's called Tracing History, and we use the fictional scenes from the first game, but we combine them with historical photos and create a small history book. So you go into the fictional scenery of historical Cameroon, and then you have to look for what are the real facts, the real archive material, the real photos, so that you get an idea what material are our stories that we tell in the games based on. And last not least, we have a reading space, books from and about Africa that are very popular because it's very comfortable for people to sit in there. Amazonia, it's still under construction. I want to focus just on one aspect. We had indigenous advisors, and they really wanted us to create a huge rainforest, an interactive forest. And so we have this interactive rainforest with sound stories, and in the forest we show indigenous stories and creation myths from the Shipibo, Pemon, and Yekwana communities in the Amazon region, and also one panel is dedicated to the destruction of the rainforest that is still going on and very, very disturbing. To create a rainforest that sort of like conveys the experience of the indigenous people of the forest and also appeals to the audience and avoids stereotypes and kitsch, we used a very iterative design process. So step by step, we did research like local artists and photos, and our illustrator, together with our indigenous partners, step by step developed the scenery and also the feel for the scenery. So this is, in the end, what we came up with. And as you can see, it will be interactive in the end, and stories will be told, and the children will be able to interact and sort of like, trigger the stories within the rainforest. Last not least, Oceania. How do I orient myself in the world? We also have 2 games here, one about boat building, and the inspiration was because we have a real team of Fiji boat builders who rebuilt a traditional Fiji boat for us in the museum, and we took this as an inspiration. Here are the 2 protagonists from the real people who were boat building. You see Joji and Luisa Marau. Here you can see the men with the chainsaws cutting down the boats, and we transported that into the digital game. And we also, to create another approach, you can do boat building, with your hands, with wooden material, and it's super popular. And then we have another hands-on activity about stick charts from the Marshall Islands. And last not least, also here, a table with children's books from Oceania. So just to sum up, before Cristina will talk a bit more about the game, the boats, and the histories and stories, the work process and teams, to create these spaces, it's a very cross-disciplinary team comprising museum staff, external experts, advisors, production companies. It's a collaborative character, which is lengthy and sometimes difficult, and also the curatorial role for me is being more a moderator in bringing together different bodies of knowledge and also listening a lot, not so much talking, and just to see that there are a lot of project partners to make a space like this happen. And last not least, 30 children and teenagers from 2 schools and 1 association who did the user testings with us.
Exactly. And then I just take over to give a little bit of an insight in one of the games, the one about stories and histories of the boats of Oceania. This is what we see in these slides. This is a game you see, like you play from above, and this is quite of the same. I just try to play the video right now. 1 second. I hope it's working. Exactly. This is basically what the player sees is like is a view from above, from a fictional landscape of Oceania, and you see the 6 boats. You are surrounded by the exhibition space, and you have to pick up a boat, and your task is just to collect the 4 coins in your color. Each coin is a part of a history. You can watch after collecting the 4 pieces, basically. And just because we are a little bit on a rush, I just move to the next video. 1 second. We just pick up one example of the videos you can see when you have collected all 4. All 4 pieces, and this is about a boat of the island Luff, which is very, very controversial in these days in Germany because it's colonial past, and this is for us showing out how we deal with this difficult heritage. And at the beginning, we just give a kind of an impression of the function of the object and the place where it comes from. And actually, what we do here is like to put the objects and the kind of power relationship. It was acquired by the museum, kind of, and basically in this case was like the interest of Western hegemony is like Germany into raw materials in the area, and the following resistance by the population that ended up in riots and establishing the German colonial power in the whole area. And so, something that is very, very important for us at this point is the key message that is the last image of the video, because it's like it's our way to strength on this kind of context for the object. And I will just very shortly reflect that when you are working with this kind of difficult heritage, you have to take a lot of decisions and write more than just trying to choose a kind of storytelling or like a style for the visuals. You have to deal with issues like how to depict the people from the island, from this island Luff in Papua New Guinea when there is no visual recording for them. You confront with maybe preconceptions or whatever, but this is like really an issue. And you have also to confront how to which part of the story you want to tell and what to do with the gaps in the documentation. And actually, in this very specific way, example, you have also to think about how to, in this case, how to tell in images the horrors of the colonial German time in this way, without kind of reproducing this kind of violence. And maybe we just move directly to the third block. I think one very important thing, like for me, maybe for us also, is that if you work with these kind of objects and you try to contextualize them means much more than just explaining. It's kind of processing. It's processing for the now and processing for something that is upcoming. And taking this approach, and also like having in mind that we have like a 4 family space to work on, we decided to put out, like to share with all of you, like some learnings, basic learnings, things that we want to keep and to reinforce for the next space, for the next family space. And one of the basic things for us of the learnings is we want to multiply, to reinforce and to strengthen a multiple accessibility. So like to multiply the kind of access points to the exhibitions and to the reflections, and also like obviously in terms of digital and analog access, but yeah, wide range. And I just move on maybe.
Yeah, we already talked about this. This is, for us, an important learning. Working with diverse teams with different bodies of knowledge is great. It really, I think it gets a great quality to the products, but also we cannot do it another way because these are sensitive collections, and I am not entitled, and I don't want to talk about Cameroonian colonial history. I cannot. And it takes a lot of time, and if I write as a traditional curator a text, it takes me a few hours. If we do it in a collaborative process, writing texts is a matter of a few weeks, and then intense discussions. And here we just give you an idea of how many different experts and types of knowledge come together to create these media products and these spaces.
And one of the things that is very, very important for us, for the digital access points, or for also for the for all of the access points, is like to test, to make testings, and to do as much as we can and as much our resources and allows to. But this is because they really help us to go further, to actually meeting the visitor in this point. And I look at the time, so.
Yeah, we're a bit over time. Yeah, what's really important for us is that we find strategies to empower the visitors, like in this game. And the question, what would you have done, gives you the power to make a choice, and also to reflect upon how difficult it is to make a choice within an oppressive system, how far your personal responsibility goes. But it raises the question of personal responsibilities in a colonial system. And last not least, we have already seen some organizational charts today, which I'm happy about. The type of, the approach of work we tried in the family spaces kind of are in contradiction to the organizational chart of the Humboldt Forum. This is the Humboldt Forum as an organizational structure, and as you can see, it's the classical structures of cultural institutions that are modeled after the political ministry institutions, and they're very vertical and very hierarchical. And what our approach is about, and also of many of our colleagues, it's like being more horizontal and creating relations with a lot of different stakeholders and groups. And I find resonance when I look at the model of Frédéric Laloux. He is an advisor and management coach, and he sort of like, depicted different paradigms for organizations and what could be an organizational type of the future. And I liked his type of the pluralistic approach, where it's about empowerment for everybody involved, where it's a very value-driven culture, like the way we discuss about, we listen to each other, we exchange perspectives, and it aims at integrating different stakeholders and group. And I wish that this work can contribute to transforming the museum maybe in a more pluralistic direction. And thank you so much for your attention. We know it's the fifth yes, presentation in a row. Thank you.